Hello, hello, hello. My name is Hillary Luck, and I am the director of OCS Connect, which is a division under Our Community Salutes. And Our Community Salutes' main purpose is to be the first to say thank you to young men and women going into the military. Mostly are young men who go straight out of high school into the military. OCS Connect is here to support parents, guardians, and listees on that journey and supporting their loved ones in their military experience. And today we are very fortunate to have Andy with us. Andy, did I pronounce your last name Reacher?
Rickers, like Snickers.
Rickers. Oh, Andy Riechers with us. And I'm excited because this is my first time having a one-on-one conversation with Andy. Andy, without even knowing us, without even knowing our community, said yes. And I'm so grateful that he did that. He is an educator. He is a mentor. Today, we're going to talk about mentorship. He's a veteran from the U.S. Air Force. He is a teacher. He's a Medal of Honor legacy graduate, and so much more. I have to be honest, Andy, when I talk about you, Stacy, who introduced you to us, she had nothing but great things to say about you. So without even knowing you, I feel excited of the possibility of where this interview is going to go and what you're going to be able to share with our parents, that hopefully they'll be able to take those seeds and plant them into their enlistees, and also myself as a parent. What I'd like to do, I gave a brief background of who you are, but I'd like you to tell us in 1 to 2 minutes who you are and give us a little insight into yourself.
Sure. Yeah, I'm currently a public school teacher in Wisconsin, kind of the southwest part of the state near the Illinois, Iowa, kind of tri-county area, close to the Mississippi River. I've been teaching full-time here at my current position for about 11 years. Prior to that, I substitute taught at several different school districts. So this is about my 21st year in education. While I was completing my teaching certification, I was still serving in the Air Force Reserve. And
Mm.
prior to serving in the Air Force Reserve, I was active duty Air Force for about 5.5 years. I used my GI Bill to complete my bachelor's degree in history and got my teaching certification as part of that, and was hired almost immediately after I graduated in my hometown. So was sort of a lucky situation where they had a position that was opening as I was graduating, and I just happened to fall into the right spot. So
That's
I teach, yeah, I teach civics, 8th grade civics. It's a small district, so I have to wear a lot of hats. 8th grade civics. I have high school sociology, AP psychology, economics, and then I also teach driver's ed. So just to keep me busy.
that's awesome. And I definitely would see that as keeping you busy. I'm a former educator. I taught for over 13 years, and I know how challenging and rewarding it could be being in the classroom and working with the young people. But you didn't just leave it there. You've decided to mentor. You've decided to put yourself in a position of service, not only in the classroom, but in the world. Can you tell me specifically an experience for yourself in the military that had a lasting impact on you, that said, you know what, because of this, I want to be someone that serves other people?
Yeah, I think there were a couple of different situations. Certainly, when I got to my first duty station, which was out in Utah, I was a little bit older when I joined the military. I wasn't right out of high school. I had graduated from college. I was 23 when I enlisted. I had thought about joining the military when I was still in high school. I don't think I had the courage to pull the trigger when I was 18, so to speak, and join and enlist. But as I continued to get my education and go through college, I found that my desire to serve hadn't diminished. And by the time I was finishing up my bachelor's degree, I knew that's where I wanted to go. I wanted to serve. I didn't know I was going to serve for almost 21 years, which is what it ended up being between active duty and the reserves. But I'm glad I did. And when I was in active duty station out in Utah, there were opportunities where, again, as I was a little bit older, um, I got a chance to meet some young troops who were 18, 19, and were easily swayed by the inexperience of having even just a little bit of life experience under their belt,
Mm.
understanding the demands of now having a full-time job, a adult salary, responsibilities, duties, commitments. Being responsible to others and being responsible to yourself to do the job well. There are a couple of opportunities where I could just kind of remind them daily that it was a privilege to wear that uniform, and they should remember that every day. So there were a couple of times in Utah when I was working with some younger troops, and I'm not a person necessarily to lecture them, to tell them what they're doing wrong and to give them sort of the here are the consequences kind of speech, but just to remind them of their responsibilities and kind of dig down into them. Why did they decide to join? Because whatever it was, I'm trying to find a job, I wanted to travel, whatever it was, that's great. Now you have a commitment to me and I have a commitment to you. And if we don't honor each other's responsibility to each other, then our job's not going to get done. Our mission's not going to get done. And I think I saw some opportunities for growth and maturity, and that wasn't something I could shy away from.
That's awesome. I definitely heard your heart in that. It seemed like you were intentional about connecting to the heart beyond the job. How do we as parents help our enlistees, our young people, find someone like you that sees them beyond the job? First of all, even determining I need a mentor in my life. There's some areas that I may not be performing at my best. How do I, as a parent, share that information with my enlistee to say, you know what, there's Andy's out there for you. This is what you can do in order to get to an Andy.
Yeah, I think it's good that we at least ask the question. I think there's sometimes young service members who sort of struggle in silence with they're having trouble adjusting. Maybe they're away from home for the first time. Maybe they are a little unsure about their responsibilities on the job, whether it's infantry, whether it's something with aircraft mechanics, whether it was something in finance, base security, whatever it might be. If they're unsure about how well they're performing on their job, that can be part of the growth, part of the maturation process. But ask the question and remind them, hey, ask questions. If you're unsure, try to find somebody who has a few years under the belt, who's maybe gone through the same position as you have, and find out how do they get through these little tough spots. Hey, we've got a practice exercise coming up for a deployment. Tell me what I should be prepping for. Tell me what I should I be inventorying my go bag and making sure that I've got all of my appropriate deployment gear ready to go, so I'm not scrambling at the last minute. So it's always encouraging them to ask the question and encouraging them to not be embarrassed by any questions that they might have, especially first-term enlistees. Stacy and I always kind of talk about things, especially with teaching, is a lot of times students don't know what they don't know. And that same true really is, it's the same with new military members. If they've never been deployed, if they've never been on a practice exercise, if they've never had a recall where suddenly their squadron commander or something like that is calling and say, hey, you need to be at the duty station in 30 minutes. What does that mean? What do I do? How does that handle? Ask those questions. So actively seeking out information, there's nothing wrong with that. And then, like I tell my students, it's okay to make any mistake you want. It's fine. Just try not to make it twice. So learn from that and grow from it. And then take the responsibility of teaching the next person. Because you might be the brand new troop today, but next week there's somebody who's newer than you are. So now you've got a whole week on them. Take responsibility to get them up to speed.
I love that you said, you may make a mistake once, but try not to make it twice. I know as a parent, I have 3 sons in the military, and my youngest has only been in for a year. And at times it's loud what I see, but I have to balance as a parent. How do I say, you know what? I get that you locked your key in your car, but where's your spare key? Like, you should have known where your spare key was at. And I get that your car is important to you, but maybe get back to work first, deal with your car later.
Mm-hmm.
How do we as parents, your advice to us as parents, guardians, how do we have those conversations and find that balance with, we still want to share with them, we still want to give them information, but they're adults, like you said, with salaries, and we may want to say to them, you know what, maybe you can't hear from me, but have you thought about getting a mentor? How do we help point them in that direction?
Yeah, I would suggest they start asking. Parents can maybe ask the question and say, who in your squadron, who in your platoon, who in your flight, whatever unit and branch of military they serve in, who has similar interests as you? Are you both into gaming? Are you both into watching NASCAR? Are you both into fitness and working out and nutrition? Whatever it be, pick an aspect and kind of pick the brain of that person and find out, how do they make daily decisions? How do they prevent little mishaps locking your keys in the car is a great one. There's a spare key somewhere. Okay. How does somebody else do it? Well, I put it on a special place so I know every day my spare key is here. Or I tell somebody, hey, if for some reason I lock my keys in the car and I ask you to go back to my dormitory and grab it, here's where it's kept. So just find out who has similar interests in you, and then be willing to, again, share information and be a little bit vulnerable. Military can be very much a sort of machismo, masculine, sometimes situations where weakness can be seen as very much a fault, and that's not the case. When you're learning, asking questions you have to have people who ask questions. So, and then find out, again, you locked your keys in your car. Okay, now that you experienced that, won't ever happen again. So we check that one off the list. We don't ever do that again.
That's great advice. I know for me, when I think about this journey, I'm learning. This is my third child, and I'm still brand new. There's still things I don't know, but I feel like having an environment where I can share that honestly. What are some things that you would say to a parent that we have to be honest with about in order to put ourselves in a position to support our enlistees?
Yeah, ask them basic questions. I know my mom was not excited to have me join the military. I can picture it. I'm sitting in the recruiter's office. I had researched joining the military for, as I said, I thought about it in high school. So I had done research for a long time, a number of years, looked into different branches, looked into different jobs, looked into different locations. Okay, what happens if I go here, I go there? And by the time I was 23 and ready to graduate college, I'm like, I'm ready to go. So I was comfortable with the decisions that I was coming from. My mom did not see it that way. That was not her plan. She was crying in the recruiter's office, and this is not what I had planned for him. And I get that, and I understood where she was coming from, but she also understood that I had to make choices, and that she raised me well enough to know that I'm not going to make bad decisions, that I'm going to do things that are wise and helpful and not going to harm others, that my choices aren't going to harm others, those kinds of things. So she got to the point where she just knew to ask better questions, such as, I got deployed a couple of times, once to Guantanamo Bay, once to Saudi Arabia during Desert Storm. She got to, are you doing an exercise in preparation for that deployment? How long is the deployment going to be? Do you have to do anything medically in preparation for that? Lots of inoculations and different things like that. So just sort of informing parents about the situations that military members run into every day, that really helps put their mind at ease as well. So communicating with the parent and just saying, yep, things are going good. Our squadron is ready for X or Y, or our platoon should be doing this or that. So that way they feel like I'm still involved in my enlistee's life, and I can speak with them to understand what they might be going through. Every day in the military every day in the military is not always fantastic, but I never regretted joining because I was prepared to go.
That's great. I love the preparation. And I also love when you said ask better questions. Recently for myself, I saw that my son needed a mentor, but I kind of was putting myself in a position where I was constantly saying the same things over and over. And at some point I realized he wasn't hearing me. And so what I said to him is, I get that I may not be saying this in a way that you can receive it, but this is something I truly believe you need to receive. Would you consider speaking with a third person, somebody outside of your mom or your dad, or even your brothers, because he has two brothers in the military? And he did agree. And I noticed, and again, it's a hard conversation because when they're not ready, they're not ready. But as a parent, we know that you have to get ready because the situations aren't going to get any easier, mainly if they're not prepared. So I would also encourage parents, if you see an area that you believe your young person is struggling in, or may struggle in the future, or is thriving in, put them in a position to say, you know what, you're great at this. Maybe there's someone who's even better than you that can help you capitalize on this talent in the military. So this doesn't have to be a negative conversation of mentorship. It could be a positive place of growth and development. I love also that you talked about the emotional aspect. I know for me, I believe that my kids are safe wherever they're at, regardless of what they're doing. The same thing that could happen at home is the same thing that could happen if they were traveling across the world. But a lot of parents are not at that position. And so they're an emotional wreck. What would you say to parents in order, thinking back to your mom, she wasn't ready for you to go. What would you say to her different today based on the experience that you've had in the military as a mentor and for yourself in the military?
I would probably be a little bit better communicator as I was doing my preparation to enlist. I probably started the process, 6 months before I actually enlisted. I started the process of investigating and talking to recruiters and things like that. I probably would have kept her in the loop a little bit more, so that way she didn't feel like she didn't. I think she felt like she didn't have more input, and
Mm.
she didn't have a voice in what my potential future was going to be. So I probably would have done a better job with that, communicating that information about what I was looking to do, what I wanted to do, and what my goals were to be, and those kinds of things. But then I would have probably just kind of kept her in the loop on some of the military jargon, and then let her know, don't always necessarily think that anything that you hear negative is necessarily going on where I am. Those sometimes people will read a story about something happening to some branch of the military or at some base or something like that. That's a very small percentage of the people in the military. It's okay if you want to, give me a call or send me a text or whatever it might be, and just say, hey, just heard this thing that happened. Yep, I don't know anybody at that base, but I understand why you're checking in. Those kinds of things. So being
That,
probably taking the responsibility to be a better communicator with her, so she felt like she had more information as to the process as well.
that's great advice. And what I would say to the parents who are listening to this, you may have failed at that at this point, but it's not too late to change that. Maybe you say to your enlistee now, let's start a new way of communicating. Let's figure out some things that's okay for me to ask and some things that you may say is off limit. But if I really am hurting and I want to know, you can give me a thumbs up and just give some signal to let me know that you're good.
Mhm.
I would encourage you to begin that conversation. A lot of what we're talking about, you may not be able to do all of it at one time, but if you can pick one thing to begin this conversation and planting the seeds with your young person about mentorships, about communication, about emotions, find one and begin that conversation. When I think about that, there's something about having resilience and knowing that, like you said, something could be happening someplace, but it may not be affecting me. I am prepared for it. How can we help our young people figure that out with the mentorship now? Because it's something about I need help when I don't know that I need help. Being able to say that I need guidance when I don't know that I need guidance. How can we help our young people, or what can we do to contribute to them to help them develop that resilience and that attitude of I am going to thrive, and regardless what position I'm in, because one, I'm prepared, and if I'm not prepared, I know where I can go to get help.
Yeah, one of the things that Stacy and I talk about quite frequently, and kind of use this as some of our problem solving techniques, is that we use kind of the theory of the 7 habits of highly effective people. And the number one habit is always start with the end in mind. So when you've got somebody who's in the military or looking to join the military, start with, hey, okay, what's your goal? What do you want to get out of that? Is your goal to travel? Okay, that's great. What else? What else do you want to do? Do you want to start a career? Great. Are you looking to meet new people? Great. Are you, ask those questions and try to get to their real point. If they're, hey, I just got to get out of this town. I'm really looking to, and people join the military for different reasons. I did it because I felt like I wanted to serve. I had a desire to serve. So it really didn't matter. I didn't go in with a job reservation. I didn't go in and say, hey, I'm going to be a this or that. I went in and I kind of let the Air Force give me some options, and then I got to pick. But I was okay with whatever happened because I knew that I had the opportunity to serve. So I was ready mentally to accept whatever they were going to kind of put at me, throw towards me, and ready to accept that. And that's something that maybe parents want to have that conversation, is start with the end in mind. So you're 17, you're going to join when you're 18. Great. You want to serve for 4 years, 2 years, 5 years, 6 years, whatever it is. Okay, what do you want to do at the end? What do you want to do at the end of those 4 years? What do you want to achieve? Well, I want to be a staff sergeant. and I want to have been deployed because I really want to, serve in a forward area, or I really want to complete my degree. I've started, but I really want, I'm hoping to meet new people, and just kind of ask those questions. And if their answer is, well, I don't know yet, that's okay, because at least you asked the question. And because that might be the first time somebody said, what do you want to do after you've done your 4 years of military, 6 years of military? If they say, I want to serve for 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, perfectly fine. Okay. What are the things that you want to accomplish while you're there? What kind of education do you want to receive? What kind of, how would you like to meet people? How would you like to earn an income? So starting with the end in mind is something that I always talk about, to address the unknown, to address we don't know what we don't know. Well, let's start asking those questions. We're not going to figure out everything out today or get all the answers today, but at least everybody is thinking about it. They're thinking about it. You're thinking about it. So when the question comes up a year from now, okay, you're a year in. Are you happy with where you are? No, I wish I would have been an E4 instead of an E3. Well, I was really hoping I could get stationed in this duty location or that duty. Okay, what are you looking to do? Well, I need to be qualified in this, and I need a higher score in that, and I need to maybe take this training class. Okay, and now they're really starting to piece together a sort of solid plan on what their path wants to be. So one of the things that, people who wander into the military usually end up wandering their way out, and their record isn't very impressive. So they go in with a purpose, they have a reason, they understand the responsibilities, and they accept those quickly. And usually their career is, whether it's 4, 2, 20, 22, whatever it is, usually their career is very satisfying.
Right. And again, it's a choice to have a solid career. One of the things that you mentioned is the 7 habits of a highly effective person or a highly effective teen, because one of the things I did when I was a teacher, we had that as our foundation. We read that book the first week, and we said, we're going to build upon this throughout the whole year. And what I would say to parents, and we're not pushing this particular book, it could be any book, but maybe there is something out there that you can grab hold of and use that as a foundation to have a conversation with your young person. You may not read the whole book together, but if you say, you know what, every time we talk, let's read a paragraph or let's read a chapter, or you read it, and when we talk again, let's see how it's impacting my life and how it's impacting your life. Because one of the things I can tell you as a parent of young people in the military, I'm growing as rapidly as they're growing. And sometimes they're saying stuff to me that's reminding me to continue to grow. And so the relationship and the balance can go both ways. And when we realize that we're dealing with adults, although they may be 17, 18, 19, they're still adults. And if we're open to hear from them, they may be more open to hear from us. So come from a place of balance with the conversation as opposed to dictatorship, because no one wants a dictator over their lives. Would you agree with that, Andy?
Yes, I agree with that. And I think one of the things the military will have every 18-year-old and 19-year-old doing is making decisions. Sometimes young military members, inexperienced military members will make a not very wise decision. And that's part of the learning experience. But if ideas and a mentor has the ability to share the issues that someone might be going through and maybe bring them back from a potential problem situation, that always can be helpful. I know I have one of my students right now is just completed his National Guard basic training. He's probably going to do AIT when we get to this summer. And when he came back from basic training, he was a different young man. Before he was, a little bit aloof, a little bit undisciplined, was excited to go, but he kind of looked at it as sort of this adventure and, hey, we're going to go have fun and I might get a little bit of money. And then he came back and all of a sudden, he stood a little taller and his answers were a little bit more accurate and he was more receptive to information. He made more eye contact. So you could see that growth that he went through, that maturation that he went through. And a lot of that was probably things where he realized I'm not really in control of my environment right now. So I have to make sure I fit into what the military needs from me. So I think asking individuals to sort of take on that responsibility when they first start getting into the military, I think is really, really important. Understanding how to be, in the Air Force, it was how to be a good wingman. My student who just came back said how to be a battle buddy. So if we had, lots of conversations about, don't let somebody go out to to the evening weekend activities alone. Make sure you've got somebody there. If somebody needs a ride home, here's my number. I don't care if it's 2 a.m, pick up the phone. So
I think that's excellent advice. And what I was hearing as a parent when you were saying that is, I need to say to my sons, how do I become a wingman for you? And it may look different than how their counterparts in the military may be a wingman or a battle buddy, but I have a role to play. My husband has a role to play. And what I would say to the parents who are listening to this, figure out your role and have a conversation with your enlistee about you wanting to play that role with them and that you want to put yourself in a position. And sometimes it has to be in a position where you're okay with the answer not being the one that you want to hear, because they're growing and they're developing in areas that you may not be prepared to hear, that they're moving a little different than the foundation that you laid. You got to trust, like Andy said, his parents did a great job with him early on, and they had to trust that he was going to become the man that they were already sowing into him being. And I think as parents, we have to figure that out as well. Um, you've already answered one of my questions about the challenges. Not being in the military, I have no military experience, so I don't know firsthand the challenges that my sons may be facing or may have faced. How do I, or how do parents, guardians who are listening, how do we support them in areas that we may not even understand the challenges that they're facing?
yeah, I think as we've talked about, I think asking questions are good. Sometimes military members aren't great communicators with people who don't serve in the military because they feel like they don't necessarily have um, the same sort of schema that military members do. They don't necessarily understand the day-to-day routines, the demands, the physical demands, the time constraints, the job requirements. But that sometimes that's sometimes an excuse for not communicating effectively. So, and then as parents, just read up about whatever you think can benefit you when you want to ask questions. So if your son or daughter is going into the military and they want to join the Navy, look up a little bit about the base that they're going to go to. Look up the job they want to do. Talk about, maybe you find some information about some of the bases that they're going to attend. Do a little bit of research about that. So that way you can ask questions. If my parents came to visit me when I was stationed out in Utah, and they had done some research, what's out in Utah that we can go visit. And, there was, beautiful mountain ranges and different things like that. So, and they were prepared to ask questions. One of the things I think sometimes too is, if you get an opportunity to go visit somebody at a military base, if you get a chance to meet one of their supervisors, that's always can be kind of a surreal experience, because sometimes the supervisor's probably like, okay, I'm not sure why I need to beat mom or dad, but it's because that person that you're mentoring looked up to you. And, again, as a person that troops had to bring their parents over to me and, wanted to shake my hand and thank you for helping my son and thank you for helping my daughter and things like that. Of course, and I rarely would say it was my job, because that sounds like I just did it because I was told to. I was proud to do it. And I was happy for the success that they saw in their child. So I didn't necessarily ignore that compliment. I appreciated hearing that, and I took that to heart. So finding out a little bit about what they do, where they go, asking about if they have any upcoming training activities, or what are their promotion opportunities, and just various things like that. Just basic questions that you can ask. I think always provides a little bit of windows for communication that can be, so that way if they do start to open up, that you can go, oh, right, I remember you talking about Sergeant so-and-so or Petty Officer so-and-so or whatever it might be. That opens up that window for communication, and they feel like there's more of a connection.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. And I think it's wise for parents to figure out the best way to connect with the people that are in your young person's life. One of the things when I felt that he needed a mentor, I don't know that he knew that he was ready for a mentor. I didn't just limit it to people in the military. I said he's actually being mentored by his youth leader from our church. And so what I would say to you as parents, you may not know somebody in the military, and you can start with somebody that you know. Say, you know what? I know so and so is great doing this, and it may be something that your child is enjoys doing. Connect them. Be the person that gives them the phone number, or say to them, "Do you mind if I give so and so your phone number?" Don't be afraid to grab somebody that they may be doing a career totally different than what your child is doing, but they're successful. They show up. They're diligent. They have an attitude of success that you want to rub off on your young person, or even on yourself. I have a family member who was looking for a mentor for my nephew, and it opened a whole new realm of possibilities for her as well. And so what I would say to you parents, as we're tapping into this mentorship, know that this could benefit you as well. Be open to, you may come out of this with some new people in your life as you guide your young person and finding some new people in their lives. Andy, I clearly see you've chosen to have an impact on people's lives. When you close your eyes and you think about that, how has that affected you personally and professionally in your own growth?
I think it helped me understand where I needed to develop a good work-life balance. I needed to understand that part of my life now was accepting the responsibility of mentorship, that it wasn't something I could avoid. Serving in the military and talking, I've had, I don't know, 10 or 12 of my students since I've been teaching join the military. And I always left a blanket invitation. Anytime you want to come back and talk to my students, I can give you a whole hour. You can sit and I'll let them ask questions. And I've had one or two of my students that did that. And one of them, one student that came back, he was a fellow Air Force guy, stationed over in Germany for a number of years. And he does things with computers, and he has top secret security clearance. And so he has information that he simply can't share with some of the students as he was coming to talk. And they would ask him questions. Have you ever done this? And have you ever done that? And he would say, I can't really talk about that. And I had to remind the students, he's not trying to be coy. He's not trying to be clever. He's not trying to keep your attention. There are things that he can't talk about because his responsibilities extend to national security. And they kind of were like, oh, wow. Okay. And so accepting that responsibility, that role, probably helped me develop a good work-life balance. So knowing that that was part of my daily responsibilities now. It can't be just something where, as a former teacher, you didn't get into teaching because you get summers off. We work plenty to make up for any of the summertime that we got off. And so those hours that we spent in preparation for the daily teaching activities, those are things that part of that mentorship, part of that being receptive to when you see somebody who just needs a, hey, how you doing? How's everything going? How's the game last night? What's new? Hey, I saw your mom, such and such. And just letting them know you're taking an interest in them somewhere outside of, hey, did you turn in your homework assignment? So taking that initiative to make that slight connection, that's something they can come back to later because they know that I've opened that window.
That's all really good advice. Even as you were speaking, I started thinking, you know what, there's areas that I may not be able to help my sons directly, but maybe I can mentor somebody else in that area. Maybe there's something in me that I can plant a seed in somebody else. And even if my sons see me doing that, they may benefit in saying, I want someone like that in my life. So I would say to you, mom, dad, parent, guardian, loved one, whoever's listening, open the door for the possibility of you being the answer to someone, that you may be the mentor that we're talking about. And it may not be for your own enlistee, it may be for somebody else's. But be open to that possibility, because I don't think it's a coincidence that you're hearing this conversation. I think that we're all called to do some things bigger than we think we're prepared to do. Andy, I know, unfortunately, you've lost your father, and I know on the 22nd is his birthday. First of all, the fact that you committed to be on our call on the 22nd says a whole lot about who you are. Is there a memory of your dad that you would like to share with us that keeps you going and keeps you moving forward in the things that you're doing?
So one of the stories that I kind of always like, my dad was an old car collector. He had several old classic cars, and then when he passed away, he passed them on to my brother and sister and I. So I have one of his classic cars. It's a 1931 Chevy Roadster in his favorite color, pea green and black. I don't know how he got that combination, but pea green and black. And when we were young, and he had had it his entire life, at least since I was born, he had his whole life. So it's been in my life the whole time too. So when we'd ask questions about, what got him into cars and why he does such a good job with them, and it he always sort of behaved like, well, because this car represents who I am. And it's sort of like the old story about the guy who's out fixing up his yard, and he's 75 years old and retired, and his neighbor comes out and says, "Why are you taking such good care of your yard? It's not a big deal." And the guy would say, "It's because my name's on the mailbox."
Mm.
And so it's kind of like when I remind students, you put your name on your work, so that way, because you take pride in your work. That's why you put your name on your homework and on your tests and quizzes and things like that. And he always did that. So that's one of the things I think as a trait that he sort of instilled in me without saying it. We didn't necessarily have a 2-hour conversation about, how that worked. It just as a responsible, caring individual, he would display that characteristic of, because I'm responsible for it, and that's why I take care of it. And you can do that. You could do that with your things, and you could do that with people that are in your life. It's students that struggle after they leave here and find themselves in situations that I kind of look back and go, what could I have done a little bit better? And sometimes the answer is nothing, and then sometimes I was like, I missed the mark here, and I have to learn from that. So. But
Andy, that was a great way to end it, because I think as a parent, sometimes we wonder if we've done enough. We wonder if we provided enough for our young people to find success. And I would say to every parent on here, you did the best that you could do. And the great thing is that it's not over. It doesn't stop when they leave your home. You can still continue to plant those seeds. I know that there may be some questions out there that we didn't cover today that you're saying, wow, I wish you would have gone a little deeper in this area. The great thing about that is that you can ask those questions. We are going to be together again on January 22nd at 7 p.m. for our virtual event, for our live talk with Andy and other parents, because you may have some tips that you heard today that you said, oh, I could add into that. Show up, be a part of that virtual event, and share the link with someone else in your life. Maybe there's somebody else in your life that's struggling with or need to hear this conversation on mentorship. Please invite them and come out and be a part of this. Andy, I can't thank you enough. I truly appreciate you. I know that you're a very busy person, and it was hard for you to carve out this time, but you did it anyway. And for that, I say thank you for myself, and also for all of the parents and all of the enlistees in the future that will see this video. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your commitment to this country and to our young people.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I was glad to do it.
Thank you.